Microphone's on, y'all.
Check, check.
1, 2, testing. Okay, I think we're live.
What event?
The Trail Foundation.
Okay.
Twilight fundraiser thing.
Is everybody on?
Yes.
All right, we're gonna call the meeting to order at 7:15. Apologies to everyone for being a little bit late. We are all juggling kids and life, and so thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Let's do it.
All right, everybody has the agenda, had a chance to go through it. First thing is a roll call. So, Alex, you mind starting us off?
Alex Robinette.
Tony Stein.
Brian Nash.
And Jordan Scott is chair. All right, are there any public comments for items not on the agenda from our audience tonight? Anybody want to talk about anything? All right, hearing none, we will move on from section 2. On our consent agenda are the minutes from last meeting. Do I have to have a motion for this on the consent agenda? It's just a move to approve the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions?
Thought it looked good. I'll move to approve them.
Okay, motion to approve is on the table. Any discussion? I do have 2 points for discussion, if you guys don't mind real quick, which is to say, Board of Adjustment, we recommended that they reduce it down to 4 to fit with state code, and the city council passed that. We also recommended that they accept veterinary services as part of C1 without, what do we call it?
Overnight.
I was gonna say daycare, but I know that's not
Oh, yeah.
it. So without overnight kenneling, and they accepted and passed that as well and added it to that. So just giving you guys feedback on that. So any other further discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none, all in favor of passing the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes from the previous meeting? Oh, do we get a second?
I second.
Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries unanimously. All right, we're moving now into item number 3, which is a public hearing. We will open it up at 7:17. Regarding the preliminary plat application at 2514 Rollingwood Drive. Is there anybody who would like, in the audience, who would like to speak on the plat application at 2514 Rollingwood Drive? All right, hearing, yep.
Are you going to describe what the hearing is about, what the hearing is covering?
Right now, yeah, I'm happy to do it. It is a preliminary plat application for a lot located at 2514 Rollingwood Drive. And that's effectively what we're looking at this morning.
Well, it's been planted for, 50 years, so.
Our understanding is that it's meets and bounds currently, and that it was an unplatted lot. Do we have that wrong?
It was not a legal lot.
Well, under meets and bounds, it hadn't been platted by the city. There's only a few more of these left. This used to be our bread and butter, but we're kind of out. So my understanding is that the lot was meets and bounds. Yes.
Carrie
introduce
Kaler,
yourself.
Development Services Manager. Yes, so the lot was never platted and filed with the county. So this is just to plat it, have the meets and bounds, setbacks noted and filed.
Okay. Okay, so it was never platted originally. Not uncommon in Rollingwood.
We live at 2501 Timberline Drive.
Yeah, thank you.
We just live next door to it and have for 38 years, and we're interested in what might take place behind us. Our main concern is drainage, because we've never had any trouble of drainage from that lot, and I expressed our opinions, in a recent drainage survey within the last 2 years or so, that our main concern is that if you permit a larger footprint on that lot, then we may very well have drainage problems. Now, I just spoke with our neighbor, Joe, we've known a long time, and I feel sure he will do a great job with whatever he's gonna do. But we do not want any drainage. It's a block with 4 houses, one on each corner. And we've never had any trouble, but our other 2 neighbors have in the past. And presumably it came down the driveway of the existing driveway area, and then spread out onto these other 2 lots, one next door to us and one catty-cornered from our lot. So anyway, my concern is that, and I think our concern, I should keep saying, is that if you permit a large home, which you're permitting in other parts of the city, then we may well have a drainage problem since we're downhill from this lot. So I would like for you to take that in consideration. As far as the plat business goes, I myself spoke with our building official, Mr. Alexander. Is that his, I believe that's his name?
He has since
Former,
retired, but
yeah.
yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't know anything about it either, and I looked it up too, and it is Mr. Moore, George Moore, the former owner and resident, referred to it as an easement. But Mr. Alexander said he didn't think it was an easement because it wouldn't be 25 feet. But the lot next to it has the same thing, housed now
Oh, you're talking
occupied-
about the rear section of the lot?
Yes.
Okay.
It is 25 feet, and the house, existing house, is sitting on the main lot. It's not sitting on within this 25-foot easement. So I don't know if they thought maybe they'd put a road through there at some point or what, because it would connect, but there are houses there. But the house next door to this property that you're looking at
Yep.
also has that 25-foot easement. If you look at it, it's now occupied by the Lepore family. And I have spoken with Mr. Lepore about it, and he said it's a separate taxing entity. It's taxed separately from the house. It only had, what, 3,000, a small amount of taxes on that 25-foot strip
Sure.
that did not, because it was not part of the lot. I mean, you're gonna get more taxes if you put it, well, if you put it in the lot, you'll get higher taxes.
If y'all wanna look at this, that portion is noted on here, if you wanna.
You're now calling it Rollingwood Estates, but originally, when I talked to Mr. Alexander about a year or so, two ago, he didn't know what it was called. He had to do some research. Are you replacing him then? Okay. Have you spoken with him about this at all? Might be a good idea just to check with him, I think, just to see what, why it was done this way in the beginning, I don't know.
And remind me which property you were in?
2501 Timberline, corner of Rollingwood and Timberline. On
Okay,
the- on the
2501 Timberline,
Right.
directly to
Directly
the east
behind
of
this
this
lot.
lot, directly behind this lot.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
That's confusing.
It is a bit
Because
confusing.
you face Rollingwood Drive?
No, we face
They
Timberline.
face Timberline. It's where
Mr. Moore
Timberline curls
faced,
in.
the
Timberline
Moore
curves
property
around.
faces Rollingwood.
Oh, there's a street over here that's
Yeah.
not on this?
You can't-
Oh,
it's hard
there's
to see
just
it, yeah.
two houses, okay, got it. I was thinking that the block continued, okay.
Anyway,
So we do face this, and the answer that Mike would give you and has given others in the past is that the platting process, because there are no changes to the property, doesn't contemplate drainage. That's during the building process. The platting process is truly just the legal boundaries of the lot, but it does not involve drainage necessarily so because nothing's changing on the lot that would require new or different drainage. So when we've dealt with this, it is then shifted over to the drainage rules and the building permit, where in which drainage is addressed.
well, I think you need to take note that if you decide to make it all one lot and change it from what it is now, then the taxes will be different. I would assume they'd have to be, because right now, that 25-foot strip on both of those two lots that face Riley, or border Riley, I should say, is, they are not taxed in the same way that the lot is.
Okay, I would, and I don't know if we can comment on taxing. The preliminary proposal as drawn contemplates making that one lot platted within the county.
Yes, I
Yeah,
understand that.
Okay,
Right.
yeah. Okay,
And will then City of Rollingwood make that adjustment with the county? I guess the Travis County Appraisal District who has it as two separate parcels. I guess this is going to, platting it will make it one tax parcel?
Can I see the,
yeah.
And by platting them together, you can therefore build a larger house.
That's what
And
worries
that's
me.
your concern.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't want a large square foot house
Yeah,
back there that would
because suddenly
not-
your
I mean, be-
buildable
so
area
it's
is
this block
increased.
1A, block A, and what is the portion that people are concerned about?
The rear,
It's this
So
thing as a separate
here's
parcel.
the parcel,
Tax
here's
parcel.
the 25-foot drainage easement, and here's the property behind.
Well, they were calling it
This
an
is where they
easement,
live.
25-foot
Yeah.
easement is what more.
It's
And
not
so she's
listed
saying
on this
is
as an
listed
easement.
As a different,
It's a different tax part. I actually looked at buying both of these years ago and I noticed it was a different tax parcel.
And we have no idea what
Well,
the
this
nature
one
of
and
this
this one.
easement
Goodness
initially
gracious.
Not at the
was
same time,
for.
two
Must
separate
be doing
times.
quite well.
No, two
Their
separate, this is
survey's
when,
not
you know what, this is
showing
when
this
this one
as an
sold, I
easement.
didn't get it, and it sold for like
I don't think
660.
it was ever.
Yeah.
I wish I had a do-over on that one.
But
Well,
the
Mr.
skinny
Alexander did
piece
not
couldn't have been a lot.
know that it was an easement.
That
Let me-
skinny little 25-foot
I
tract.
do have a
Yes.
question procedurally about
So
these
the easement is.
replatting.
Okay, hold on. We're gonna have quorum real quick. First off, those talking from the audience, I appreciate you guys being on the mic and stating your name for future. So we'll talk about that stuff in a second. We're under public right now, guys, so
Yeah, I'm
we'll have an
back on the mic.
opportunity for us to discuss,
Okay.
but what, I definitely wanna make sure that we have your comments in. Do you mind coming to the mic, giving your address, name and address?
Catherine Harris, 2501 Timberline Drive.
Perfect.
And Mrs. Harris, I think, so are you saying that your concern was that this portion of this is being reflected as one big lot, but you saying from a tax perspective or on the tax rules, it's listed as
Well,
a
it should
separate?
change. The taxes should be much higher because that 25-foot strip is not taxed in the way that the house lot is.
Interesting, okay. Well,
I
thank
mean,
you
you
very
can
much.
check with the appraisal district, but the last time I did, there was a significant difference because the taxes were paid separately on that 25-foot strip. They're
We've
listed
been-
separately.
And we've been counseled before, guys, that tax does not.
Yeah, no,
bear-
I just wanted to make sure we
I
all
just wonder if
understood
it
what
gets,
Mrs.
if
Harris
what,
was
if when
saying.
we plat it, if that rolls it into one from the county appraisal district standpoint, or if it's
So that's a great
still
question.
two different
Do you
lots,
know
or
if it's, if
I mean,
we
can we
plat it
plat-
as one lot, it becomes one lot, setbacks move to that rear line. So one thing is we have a rear setback. So we're moving that rear setback. If we plat these two portions as one lot, we would move the setback that much further, right?
Yes.
setback, it's my understanding the setback,
So one of the issues is that they have not drawn the setbacks on this plat.
Yeah.
So from a preliminary standpoint,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to, sorry, we'll talk about that in a
Well,
second.
yeah,
We're under public. Before we get too much further into it, guys, we'll have a chance. I'll write down everything y'all are asking, and then we'll hit it during, during session,
To
regular
note,
session.
so I think to Mrs. Harris's point,
Yes.
the acreage that's listed in this tax certificate in our packet lists the acreage as .364, whereas it's .4446 on the plat being proposed. So she's right that it's showing up as less than this full extent in the tax records, so. We don't know what that really means right now, Mrs. Harris, but we appreciate you noting it for the record, and we'll talk about what to do about that. But I see what you're saying now, so thank you for highlighting that. That's-
Well, and also the lot next door to that is the same thing. Now, that's a different owner, different.
Next door to
but
on
the
Riley?
whole strip from
Yeah.
Rollingwood Drive over to Timberline Drive
Yeah,
has a 25-foot easement between the properties. Or it was called an easement, 25 feet between the two properties, between our next door neighbors and us.
Just to
Yeah, I see
clarify,
that.
somebody else currently owns that strip?
No,
No.
No,
No.
they
They've
own
traded
both,
together.
they own both
They own both.
portions.
Okay.
both homeowners.
but on the next door lot, it does look like there's a tract B that is owned. See
those are
this?
both owned by the same.
Oh, same people,
Yeah.
Same people.
but
own it.
they're separated out as different tracts.
Yep.
Yeah, the Lepores own both pieces, and
I wonder if
you-
that lot is
are you the
platted.
owner?
Well, see, that's why I bring that up.
That one
because
might not be.
When Mr. Moore
Probably not.
spoke to us about our interest in buying the 25 feet, this has been several years ago, because he thought he could sell it separately since it's separate from this lot.
Yeah.
But that's why we are involved, because we had had conversations with the previous owner of the property under question. And I talked to Mr. Alexander about it, about, what, is this legitimate? Can he sell this, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I just think you need to know the whole story.
Okay, well, I do appreciate
And the fact that if you
you.
increase the size of that lot, then that brings the building on that lot much closer to our lot, as if you're going by traditional
Correct.
setbacks. And as much as I enjoy our neighbors, they have beautiful children, very talented people, I have to protect my own property too. So.
Is there something you'd like to?
Sure, Joe Garcia, 503 Riley, we
Okay.
bought that, kind of keeping on the same conversation going. We know George, we've known them for a long time. It's not an easement. I'm a developer also. I built neighborhoods and subdivisions outside of Austin. And easements are really, and you probably know this, an easement is an imaginary line that you have to kind of, the utility company or the water, anybody can go through there and you can't say no. They gotta take down a fence. You can't build on an easement either. I don't know what the easement is. Do you know if it's 5 or 10 feet? There's certain setbacks from the street or the corner or the back line or the backyard or what have you. But this is, again, is for the meets and boundaries because there's not, it's not legal and it's not registered at Travis County. We went.
It's on the tax rolls.
No, but it's not a legal lot, so, whatever that means, we went through the same process at Riley. When we did the addition and the remodel, we had to take it through the same, send the letters out to the neighbors and go through the whole same process to convert it.
You're like right across the street, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to go through the same process to convert it into a legal lot. So, given that, and then to address one of the concerns on the drainage, if we go through the building process, which this is the first step, but we go through the building process, there's a drainage analysis process that we have to get an engineer. Depending on what size of structure we build, it's gonna depend on how much drainage and how much detention pond and so forth you're gonna need. And those are done by engineers, so, from what I understand, that's the process, correct? So, right now.
Mr. Garcia, are you here as the owner or as the representative of Hodgson 2017 partnership?
I'm the representative and owner. He's my business partner.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
any questions?
Any other questions for him in this public hearing? Any further comments from the audience? Anything else you want to let us know?
Well, I guess I have a question, buying it, and going through, title company and all that. I mean, did the sale happen as two individual parcels? I mean,
So the gentleman, George, owned both parcels, and it was a one transaction.
one transaction?
Yeah, two parcels. And just me, this is me speculating, but as a developer, seeing what the developer did there, I think maybe he was trying to decide what neighbor wanted to buy that other piece and who would pick it up. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
So, if I'm the developer, why would I put a sliver down the middle and then send it all the way across, right? Because I didn't even know it went all the way across to the neighbor. So it's like, who wants to buy, who wants to pay more, who wants a bigger lot? That's just me speculating, because I don't see a reason why they should have done that originally when they did.
There's a lot of stuff in
Or
Rollingwood.
maybe they had an
Why
alley
Why would they do
contemplated.
that? I don't know.
Why do they use oil well pipes to give us most of our water? That's the,
Right.
Is that right?
oh, yeah. Anywho.
Sounds
Um,
brilliant.
All right. Well, anything else before we close public hearing?
Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Yeah, we appreciate y'all being here and we appreciate you guys' comments. We'll go ahead and close public hearing at 7:35 and return to regular session. All right.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
I remember studying stuff like this about like platting and when you're platting a subdivision, and that there's requirements in the code about what is a sort of a properly platted lot in a subdivision within the city of Rollingwood, and it's like a minimum of 15,000 square feet with 10-foot public utility easement across the back and the sides and things like that. I don't know, like, I see this and it tells us how many acres. Is it our responsibility to like check these things to make sure they comply with the code's requirement on plats?
Solid
Like a plat,
point.
like a subdivision plat?
Yes.
I mean, I realize this is a subdivision of one lot, but does the building official, I guess, make that confirmation for us?
So it's my understanding that the surveyor just surveys and gives the meets and bounds of the lot that was sold. So, in this case, you'll see that 25-foot piece, which I assumed was a drainage easement, but based on what Mr. Garcia says, it makes sense that perhaps that is what it is, that was sold as two pieces. They're platting it as one lot. The surveyor marks the easements. The building official confirms that the any easements and the setbacks are correct. The city has a specific set of guidelines that the plat either meets or it does not meet. If it meets it, you're required to approve it. Or it gets approved within 30 days. If it meets all the criteria and you don't approve it or you don't meet, it gets approved either way as long as it is a legal plat. I have a copy of the requirements if you want me to hand those out.
That might be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess my understanding
so Brian,
was,
let me answer real quick to the direct question. In the past, we have asked our building official, Mr. Alexander, and he has been tasked with, does this meet the legal requirements as specified with the city? And we reduced our question on P&Z to that, because the superfluous things that we were talking about, drainage, trees, all these other things, are actually not under our purview in a platting process. It's
no,
as
I know
simple
that.
as-
That's
yeah.
why but I do know that there are certain things that a plat has to comply with, which
Correct.
is it's got to have, I believe, a public utility easement of a certain size along the side and the back, and things like that, which I didn't see reflected here. So I was just curious about.
Fantastic point. So the
Things like
issue with the preliminary plat as submitted, in the past, we had sometimes accepted preliminary and moved to final and recommended final approval by city council. That's no longer available to us. We will be doing preliminary and a separate final approval, so we will be seeing these twice
Got it.
until city council chooses to change that process back to the old way. Make sense?
Got it.
So, because of that, this is a preliminary plat. I'll be honest, it is a defective preliminary plat. It does not meet the requirements. Not of the, like, it's not the boundaries don't meet the requirements, but it doesn't show, as you said, the easements.
Setback lines.
The setback lines. So we can recommend, we can either deny it and say, come on back for a preliminary, we're denying it because you don't have this. We can also motion to give it preliminary approval based upon that they will then fix these things moving forward. So
Which I feel like we've done before. That rings a
we've
bell.
done that
yeah.
as well. I'm of the line to, you guys know how long this stuff takes. I'm of the line to keep the process moving forward rather than send them totally back into the wash. But that we would move for preliminary approval based upon completing the requirements.
Conditional preliminary approval.
Yeah. Yeah, this is actually very helpful here.
Yeah, I swear there was a public utility easement aspect to it when I looked things up a long time ago, because it was a point I made in a presentation that I made before city council once, but I don't see it on here now, so.
That hasn't come up in ones I've done about having any. It's not a bad idea if it's part of our code to require it, but
I'll see where I thought that came up. But it's not like we need it now. So I hear what you're saying, I appreciate that. It's helpful. I remember that there's topo requirements, which they have.
They've got the topo. They
There's
don't
dimension,
have the.
street frontage, isn't that one of the requirements, like a
Yeah.
100-foot minimum?
I think it's 100 feet, which they've got 124 off of right.
Well, they've got
I'm still stuck on the
99 for
half-inch
one, plus
margins. I'm not sure we're meeting this on this printout. It's very
99.
specific. Paper size.
Let's double check that. Do you have a ruler? I'm just kidding.
So based on my review, and I'm not the building official, ATS, we have an acting building official with ATS. I'm the development services manager, but based on my review, what's missing is the written description of the meets and bounds. So the meets and bounds are noted numerically, but it has to be written out. And the,
So a written description of subdivision meets and bounds?
correct. And then the, let's see, it's letter, I'll give you the letter. I had an annotated version, but. Number 7, the exact location of dimensions, description, the name of all reservations, easements, and other right-of-ways, which, including front, side, and rear setback lines.
Okay.
Does
Where's
this
the
property
including front setback line?
Number, it's
They're not
actually,
on
Riley
there.
or
They have to be
Rollingwood?
We
added.
could,
so number 7 and number 14,
What is the front of the property?
and in this
Is
list
it
that she gave us, I think
Rollingwood or
are.
Riley?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
What is the front of the property? Is it Rollingwood or Riley? Or what will it be? Okay.
yeah.
It's currently
so
Riley,
we need-
right? It's currently Riley.
It's
The
currently,
way it is, the stairwell comes up Riley, the front door faces Rollingwood.
it's currently Rollingwood,
driveway
and
is
it
on
will
Riley, is that right?
maintain Rollingwood.
Excuse
Yeah,
me.
2514 Rollingwood, guys, is at least the address. So we had a motion recommended by staff. Would you guys like me to read it out?
Okay.
We don't have to take this, but it might just be something we can edit or add on to or move with or not. Which was that we would move to conditionally approve the preliminary plat with the understanding that the following items be included in the plat prior to final approval. 1, a written description of the subdivision's meet and bounds, and 2, inclusion, description, and exact location of all easements, public rights of way, setbacks, and setbacks, including the front, side, and rear yard setbacks. So we would give preliminary approval. This would have to come back to us. It would have to come back to council, but we'd be recommending that council give preliminary approval.
I'm a little bit unclear
Okay.
on what our restraints are with respect to this, but I think that one concern that I have on behalf of the Harrises is how changing the setback of their shared property lines will fundamentally affect the home that they've been living in. Because suddenly, they're in a home, their home will be encroached upon by another house that hasn't otherwise been the case for some period of time. I don't have a visual on what either of your houses look like currently, so I don't really know what effect that has, but that would be,
So, off my general knowledge, and if I stray too far, kick me under the table. This currently has a meets and bounds line. This would be moving a side boundary 25 feet closer to their house. The minimum amount of boundary you need on one side is 10 feet. So instead of having 25 feet plus 10 of 35 feet of separation, they would now be moved down to 10 feet of separation.
a loss of 25.
If they choose to make that side 10, they can also choose to make that side 15.
But that would require
But a
moving
corner
your
lot's
house
different,
closer
too.
to the street, which I don't
Yeah,
think you
30
would
and 30.
choose
It
to.
wouldn't
Yeah,
require
something like
moving
that,
it to the
right?
street,
30
it's
and
moving
20 or
it,
Yeah.
within this plat, it's moving it side to side on the plat. Does that make any sense?
Well, it's a combination of 10 feet plus 15 for a
Right,
total.
it's 25 total feet is
Total.
the minimum,
Yeah,
right?
so
With
if you-
10 being a minimum,
You could choose 15.
you
For
could
the
choose 30. You
side,
can choose whatever you want,
25.
but,
It has to be a minimum of 10.
right, correct.
Yeah, so,
So the issue being this could move it from where it's located now
Yeah.
to within 10 feet of their
correct.
rear fence.
Yeah.
Okay,
But there's also currently no plat
there's no plat.
on either of the, I mean, there's no plat on the smaller portion either, so if, I mean,
But
either
we-
way, you
we
gotta
have
plat it, I
platted
guess.
extra, we just did one of these on the corner of Rollingwood, a block to the west. We just did one of these with Jamil's neighbor where we took a 15-foot section from one and shifted it over to the other. So it's not unheard of to take a small section of land and add it to the plat.
I think they were
Yeah.
trying to achieve a 100-foot minimum so that they could move their address to Inwood off of Rollingwood, I believe is why they did that. So they'd have the 100-foot frontage, and so they needed that.
In this case, they could argue that,
76.
They've got the
Is this-
minimum.
oh, this is 100 here?
both.
yeah.
It's
Oh,
actually
right there.
probably 100.
I mean, one of the interesting things about our rules, and this is not for discussion, but that it's on, Austin treats corner lots differently than they treat regular lots. We don't do that. And it's one of the things that's
We
come
do
up
treat differently,
for
don't we?
I
plating.
think it's a 30.
Not for.
There's
plat.
different
For
setbacks,
setbacks?
yeah.
For building,
Yeah, setbacks are
We
different on
do.
a corner lot, yeah.
There's 30, which would want,
It was
which
30
would
off the
say
corners.
you want to move it closer to that
Right.
internal border.
Okay.
Because it's pretty far from the street.
I'm gonna go reread my corner
Yeah, on a
stuff, 'cause
corner,
I
you
thought that
kinda,
was one
you
of the
kinda
issues that we
lose,
didn't
you
have.
kinda lose buildable square footage on a corner lot because you have a more significant, you know, if you have an interior lot, you've got total of 25 feet, 15 and 10.
Yeah.
I think on a corner lot, on the corner, on the street side, it's 25 or 30.
Well, the issue right now is
Automatically.
they're not even showing the setbacks
Right.
on their plat. So it can't pass as is. We can bounce them and say come back, or we can say preliminary approval, we approve it, but you need to show drawn out a written description of meets and bounds.
I found my easement section, by the way.
Okay.
It's-
Where?
It's 10563.
105, sorry.
Section 10563.
Okay. And what does it say?
can I speak more?
Yes,
so.
please restate name and address for the record. Thank you.
Joe Garcia, 503 Riley.
Thank you.
I don't know, any of y'all live in Rollingwood?
We
Have
have
y'all
to.
built
Have
in
to, yeah.
Rollingwood before?
I have.
Remodel.
Yeah.
So it's,
We
the
have.
process has been very like dragging, surveyors, and it's a real tedious process. And the surveyor obviously that did the plating overlooked both of these things. I just found out right now. But if it's not economically, it's expensive to, prolong and continue the process. I would really appreciate it if we could do the preliminary with those two conditionals, the 7 and the 14,
We can give preliminary with a more general that you bring this plat to meet the total requirements of the code without specifically calling out the two sections.
Yeah, we know it's at least 7 and 14.
Yeah, but
There may be other aspects on here that are,
Well, and also, I think we could also conditionally approve it subject to further research about this dual lot situation where they're not currently,
Okay.
both a part of a single lot. I just don't know. Doesn't sound like anybody really knows what that means.
Can we do that? Please, jump in.
Plats are, as has been stated, plats are very specific and there's very limited review. If they meet all the requirements, regardless of, if those two parcels, are under joint ownership and there's not any restrictions that are on there, then they're coming forward to plat it as one lot. If it meets all your requirements, then it needs to be approved.
Oh, well, that's my inherent question is, can
Yeah.
you plat two individual lots as one plat?
So that
So
back
the
lot
answer to
is
that is yes.
unplattable. It's not a legal lot.
Right,
I don't-
but you can just by right, if you're the
there's
joint
nothing-
owner, you can include it.
If there's nothing encumbering it, when you're talking about an easement, you're talking about, is there another dedicated instrument that's going to limit or restrict or prohibit?
Which
the
we
use
don't
of
know
that
because the
property?
surveyor
So
hasn't
they
shown.
need to, that's why it has to be, you can't.
Yeah,
come
my
in-
fundamental question is, can the plat cover both, or
yes.
Yes.
yes?
The
Then,
answer is
then,
yes. And in fact, I think you
then
can
that's
come
fine.
before and replat something that was previously two
so,
lots
so even
as
if,
one lot.
yeah, so if you bought the one next door, you come back and say, I wanna plat this whole thing as one lot.
You could-
Okay,
yeah.
well, that's
And
all
one of those
that's
lots, you
your
guys-
question too, is,
One of those lots does not meet the legal requirements of a
Yeah,
lot.
It's already.
well, I know you can't plat that one separately, but you could plat the other one.
So,
Correct.
Carrie Kaler, he has in your packet, you'll see the ownership documents. His title and information is in the packet. He owns both lots.
Yeah.
So due to the fact that he owns both lots, if he is within state and city plating requirements, which he's not because there's some stuff missing from this plat, planning and zoning is required to approve the plat for that lot, regardless of any other concerns, be that drainage or building proximity. All of that gets reviewed once the building plans are submitted for application and review. Right now, we don't have a building. We don't have any drainage plans, again, because we don't have any building plans. This is just taking those two parcels, combining it as one lot, and filing it with the county.
That was my only question, was
Yep.
making sure you can combine them
At
together.
what point can he choose to change the address? Is that in the plating or is that in the building? Could they
He can-
reorient
they-
the other way? Is that a plat
Yes,
issue?
that's what they
Yes,
did at
and he
Inwood
could
and
That was a
request a
plat.
change of address, and that goes to city council.
Goes to city council to
Yes,
change
it doesn't
address.
go to planning and zoning.
Yep.
And so I have kind of a slightly off-topic question then, thinking if you automatically have two lots next to each other, you want to combine them, plat them as one, you're subject to all the, setbacks, et cetera. We had that one situation on the back-to-back lots on,
Yeah, had an easement through it, but yes.
so that's what the difference was, is that had an easement through the middle? Because
were trying
because
to
they
get
wanted
rid
to
of an
try to
easement,
build
and we
one in
told
the
them
middle.
No.
They were trying to
Depends
get
on
rid of
which
an
one you're
easement.
talking about, but yeah, those back-to-back lots had an easement through the
Okay.
rear of it, and
So that's
made
different.
it-
We do not have an easement between,
We don't know right now.
preventing-
There are no easements drawn
Well,
on
good
this,
point.
I
but
think
Yeah.
so.
yeah,
Technically,
but
there
we
should
think
be
it is
a-
just a lot.
A public utility easement, I think.
Okay, so back to the public utility easement. What section was that again? You're saying 105?
10563.
I don't even know
Yeah,
how
I
to
think
search
this
on
is-
the new
I think
thing.
this is our code, right?
105
Rollingwood,
dash
Texas.
6 dash 3.
Chapter 105 subdivisions. I just searched on our library.municode.com,
Yes.
and now I lost where it was, but yeah. I just remember,
105-6.
because on my subdivision plat for where my lot is, there's, a very clear, the rear of every lot has to have a public utility easement of
Yep.
10 feet. And then I think also along a singular side lot line, on each side of a lot line.
well, they show one easement on here,
Where?
Yeah, but that's 5.
yeah.
I think it needs to be 10.
Easements
Anyway,
of
it's-
at least
it's-
10
it's-
feet in width shall be retained on each side of the rear lot lines.
Yeah. So where you,
But 10 feet means each side of the line, meaning 5 on one side, 5 on the other, right?
I think it's 10 on each side.
10 total.
Shall be 10 feet in width, shall be retained on, yeah, I don't know how to do it. Mine's, I think I have a 5 foot, but I'd have to go back and look. Okay.
What's shown on
Where's he got it on this?
Hatley
thing?
Park Estates Section 2 is a 10 foot on each side of the rear lot line. It doesn't matter. I mean, like, it's kind of
Y'all
neither
should've
here nor
pushed
there.
harder.
What's that?
I said you should have pushed harder.
Well, it was platted in 1979. I wasn't around.
Do they have an easement here? They've got a 5-foot easement.
Based on the address.
I would tell you
Oh,
that
based
the way
on
I
the
would
address,
interpret
that's
that
the
language
rear
is
of
to
it,
have
okay.
10 feet on
But
each
not
side as
across
it
the
says,
other
which
bit,
means
though.
Each side should have 10.
There's no
Kinda.
easement on this.
Assuming
section
it's
here.
shown accurately.
On the,
It would have to be reflected. It has to.
okay,
we're gonna put it
so
together.
easements as well have to be accurately, well, that was in our,
Yeah, it's on
that
there.
was in
Yeah,
our
that's
motion.
Okay.
So,
This-
I think we can get spun around the axle on whether or not this is right or not. We know it's not right now.
Yep.
So why don't we just move this into we'll give a preliminary approval subject to you correcting anything that might be missing or incorrect right now.
Yeah,
So
I agree with
by
that.
the time it comes back to us, it's gotta be in compliance with each of these little checkboxes.
Sounded like a motion to me, Tony, and your
Second.
yup, would be a second. Is that motion sufficient, or does it need to be more specific?
Conditionally approve the preliminary plat, not preliminary, we can't preliminarily approve the preliminary plat, it's a conditional approval.
Okay.
Based on the requirements you'd
You
set
open
out.
to a friendly amendment to say a conditional improvement
Sure,
subject to?
I'm not sure what the distinction is between those words, so if that's what our city attorney says to say, I will say that.
She interrupts less than Charlie, let's.
Oh, she's
stop here.
lovely. What's
Yeah.
her name again? I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to meet you for the
Sorry,
meeting.
Megan.
I like that on the
Nice to
record,
meet you.
Charlie.
Aw.
Thank you.
As a lovely person, like you're very nice and It's nice
Yeah,
to
so
have you
it's a
here.
conditional, because conditional means that there are certain things that have to take place and have to happen prior to that final plat coming back. And that's just one of those legal terms we use as far
Brian's
as
an attorney.
something.
Conditional
Yeah,
approval
conditional.
of a
If you say
preliminary plat.
Preliminary approval, what's your preliminary for?
Yeah, what I said was,
Brian,
whatever
pull it
you said
together,
sounds
please.
great to me. So let's go with that.
Okay.
All I think is we should move
Motion
on
to
from
go
this
with
subject.
that?
Can we?
Yeah.
Can we pay, like get this off?
But
the
this is
table?
we're being asked to
Conditionally
well,
approve.
but we're being asked to
I don't understand
Approve a
procedurally.
approve
whether-
a preliminary plat.
Yeah.
What is the
We're going to
difference from a
condition.
procedural
So
standpoint?
we want to
Since we're-
conditionally approve a preliminary plat.
Yeah. We have a motion in a second. We can discuss your,
So yeah, is there a timing difference between us saying go back and get this right, or us saying it's conditionally
yes,
approved?
he would have to come back and do a
For a preliminary.
wait, and then do a final.
So you'd have to wait 30 days to come back for a preliminary, then wait again.
So we'd be pushing out by at least 30 days. And that's if, and he'd also have to renotice, correct?
It'd be 60 days.
Ugh.
Plus a renotice.
Yeah,
So
that's-
guys, we got.
That's annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
Totally
get this-
understand. So, I move to conditionally approve the preliminary plat,
Yep.
subject to further corrections as we've discussed today, and anything else that might be missing from this.
Further corrections of the subdivision meets and bounds, and inclusion of description, exact location of all easements, public rights of way, setbacks, including front, side, and rear yard setbacks. Does that sound right?
That's exactly what I was.
Okay.
was trying
Is
to
there a
do.
second to this motion?
Yep. Is there a second to it?
Second.
Well,
Second.
Thanks.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion, you guys? I will note that you guys are missing an easement on that 25-foot section. You're missing other stuff, but that we're gonna wanna see that easement to spread across from the entire platted lot.
I think it's supposed to be 10 feet. That's my.
And then we're gonna research whether that's supposed to be 5 or 10 feet.
One's 5, one has to be 10, so you're probably right.
Okay. Well, let's get the easements on there correctly, get the setbacks in there correctly.
I guess you're right, because
Yeah.
it depends on which one's rear, right?
This one, yeah.
This is a. I get it.
I
This
know.
stuff is so frustrating, dude. I know
Is
how
there any
it takes
issue with
forever.
an existing house
Just wait
and
if a
setbacks?
builder, if a neighbor protests your building permit, then everything.
Like, what if
goes
a
off
house
the
was
rails.
built
Takes forever.
across setbacks?
And it's just
in the
not
new one?
on that,
Hope that doesn't happen.
like your site
But
plan
he's
and
not
building
showing
permit.
it in here. Like, the house isn't shown. I don't think you have that issue.
No.
And
We have,
I'm
we
sure.
just had one that had that issue.
In the plat?
Yeah. They were platting a lot and the house was over by half a foot from the
so,
setback.
Is it just noted on the?
Mr.
in the plat
Chairperson,
notes?
Yeah.
should we call this one to vote?
Yep, happy to call the question. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. All right, motion to conditionally approve passes unanimously at, call it, what is that? 7:58. All right, very good. Okay, thank you all. We appreciate your comments and the history.
Your letter to the public, and it mentions another hearing on November 20th, which I assume was on the same subject. Is that still?
That's probably the city council meeting on November 20th. So this now goes to city council. They can either accept our recommendation, they can reject our recommendation and reject the
Oh, I
plat,
see. So you're
but it
just-
will have to come back for a second, final approval to, if they approve it, it'll have to come back here for a final approval.
And do you publicize that to the community, or?
I don't think we send out, I mean, it's publicized through the normal means, but I don't believe another mailer is sent out. But it theoretically would be the next meeting.
But I think you can make note of it on Nextdoor or something. I think a citizen could say,
I haven't been posting our stuff on Nextdoor.
not you, you
The-
could let neighbors know or
Okay.
something
Well,
like that.
I'm in touch with our neighbors, yes, but you see, we're the only ones here.
Yeah.
We're the only ones directly affected,
Yeah.
except unless the other two corners.
So Carrie Kaler, City of Rollingwood, there will be another letter sent out to notice
Oh, there is.
for the final approval.
Oh, well, there we go.
Both are
noted.
noticed.
In addition
15,
to this
15 days ahead of the meeting. Yes, ma'am.
So
That's the notice for preliminary,
So it sounds
for the preliminary plat approval.
and Mrs. Harris, I feel like this process is incredibly confusing for me. But I don't know. So did we explain, or did it come across clearly that, like, with respect to plating, kind of some of the issues that you might be concerned about with respect to drainage and things of that nature aren't really something that are going to be at issue in the plating stage. Does that all make sense?
Not really, because the plat establishes the boundaries, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so the plat, because this confuses me, and I still don't know that I have it right, but the plat is really just saying this is what the lot looks like, and because when things existed as the county, nobody had what were called subdivisions, but once you have a city, you have to have a subdivision. And so really, you're just retracing lines most of the time and saying,
Well, this was never just the county.
well,
Rollingwood started as a city, so why, during the time it
Land-
started as a city, these two lots over here, running behind our lot and the next door neighbor's eyes, why was that never made a 25-foot?
Fantastic question.
well.
It's a good question. I think from a practical standpoint, it sounds like it doesn't matter so long as ownership is
Yeah,
consistent between the two.
Mr. Alexander never could seem to figure it out, so maybe.
I honestly, I don't know the history of it. You know, there was a period of time where you could just sell land and say, it's from that post to that post to that post to that post, and I sold it to Tony. But then,
Yeah, you're describing something that was not an established city. Rollingwood was a city from the beginning.
That still happened, though. I don't know what the.
I
yeah.
know, but at some point in time, I'm just saying that at some point in time there was a requirement that everything be subdivided or a part of a subdivision with these platted lots. And then the requirements that are in place for what constitutes a legally platted lot are just a certain sort of bare minimum. You have to have, it written out in the right way. You have to have 100 feet of frontage. You have to have your easements marked, and then you have to have your setbacks marked. And so this whole stage that we're going through is really going to only address that. So things like talking about whether there's going to be drainage problems and stuff like that kind of gets more into place when you get into the building phase, like the building plans are submitted.
From what I understand, that's correct. So the architect wants a drainage analysis plan based on the footprint of the house. That's another stage. You have to go through this stage before you get to the next stage. And totally understand your concern.
And if there were a different owner of that 15-foot,
It's 25 feet.
the 25 feet, if there were a different owner of that, then you wouldn't be able to plat it together. It would have been just the other lot, and that would be owned by somebody different that couldn't do anything with it. But because they're owned by the same people, they can plat it as one.
How big is your house?
Like 4 acres,
0.4.
something
So
like
all
that.
the lots in that little across the street, ours is like half an acre. I think Joe's lot is half an acre.
Well, I think
Big lots.
ours is close to
Um,
precise.
I'm gonna.
It's because of the.
So we should move
Yeah,
on to the next
we're gonna
agenda
move on to the
item. I
next
just wanted to
item,
make
guys.
sure that
I
she had a
appreciate
takeaway that, like, this whole process that's going on right now isn't really addressing what she had raised earlier. Because
Correct.
sometimes that can be really frustrating. And you move on to, like, the next phase is going to be, like, building official is going to, work with them on a plan, and then it can go up to the Board of Adjustment, which is not even us. So I just was trying to make sure you knew that there's other stages, too.
So on the 20th, will the city council be
Discussing
considering
this.
the subject then?
Yes. They'll consider our recommendation for
But not
contingent
drainage and not
preliminary approval.
building and.
But again,
none
they're
of that.
limited upon what they can do. The
would-
rules of the state are unfortunately pretty narrow, as our
Well, I
standard
think
city
about the
attorney
next
described.
door neighbor to this lot,
Yeah.
the Lepore family, how will this affect them? Are there, I guess it won't affect them, but I just wonder if these two lots should be, made similar, or they were made similar in the beginning, they both had 25 feet behind them.
Yeah, and I don't know if the neighboring lot has been platted.
Probably
or if it is
hasn't,
still
yeah.
unplatted.
It's all, you can look at the appraisal district site and see.
Appraisal district
That's
and
different,
plating
yeah.
have nothing to do with each other.
It will
Yeah.
say, so you know there's
So
still.
my gut tells me that their lot is unplatted. That doesn't mean it's an illegal lot. The term "make it a legal lot" is a misnomer. It's legal, it's taxable, it's just not platted as a subdivision. So
I think
I've been here for 4.5 years, and I suspect I've done about 20 to 30 of these. And at one point, I heard a rumor that we may be down into the single digits of lots left, and yet they keep finding more of these lots throughout Rollingwood that are unplatted. So I spoke with high confidence. I said, well, at least we won't have to plat something. I kid you not, 30 days ago, and then it came in as a plat.
I
So
believe it's in the minutes.
there's still more of these out there, and until Rollingwood is fully platted and legal, then people will start joining these or subdividing them, which happens as well. But in this case, to put down the plat, we have very limited ability to do anything that the state of Texas just basically says, if it's legal, you have to plat it. And in this case, he owns both. It's a legal lot. There's nothing illegal about the lot he's proposing. It's not technically correct. His proposal has some technical deficiencies, but generally the lot that he's proposing meets the legal requirements per the city of Rollingwood. And at that point, the state of Texas says, your hands are tied, you have to approve it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't mind you approving it,
Yeah.
but I want you to understand that the drainage is an issue.
Yes, ma'am.
In the-
Yes, ma'am.
It's going to open up a new set of issues, but there's nothing that we can do to address that right now.
So when he
Trees are
proposes
gonna
what
be
he's gonna
cut
build,
down.
that's gonna impact what he has to
And-
do to
He's not
the
allowed
drainage.
to shift any water at a higher amount or rate onto any other lot. He will have to have drainage improvements, and we may be straying off of the thing a bit. Okay, just a little bit. So just know that within the building rules, I was part of council when we passed these pretty new drainage rules, which have since been strengthened since I was on council in 2015. So there are a lot more hoops that he gets to, flaming hoops, I think they're now. They set them on fire before you jump through them, so.
We didn't have to, do a detention area.
I built in 2009, I didn't have to do any of this, and I have a lot of
And I hear-
respect
and
for
I
those who
hear
are
it's
building now.
expensive. And I know it's expensive because I do it now in other areas, but when it's in more small area, it's more expensive than big ranches and that kind of stuff.
Well, Brian, I appreciate you taking the extra time to explain. Hopefully this has helped you guys. We're gonna move on though. And I will personally say I've got a 13-year-old watching an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old at home alone. So, if my house may need to be replatted because it's on fire. All right, we're gonna move on to open a public hearing on item number 5 regarding residential tree canopy management of the city's code of ordinances. That doesn't make any sense to me, but we're opening it up to discuss that. Would you guys like to make any comments on the tree ordinances?
Save the trees.
Save the trees, all right. Anything? Okay, we will then close public hearing we opened it at, call it 8:07 and closing it at 8:08. And you got, the one comment was save the trees, appreciate it. So the history of this item, and if you note, we are not set to take any action on this item. This is to discuss whether or not we want to discuss it. And I know that sounds silly, but this was get it in front of the meeting and say, we passed this, if you guys recall, the city codified this outside of chapter 14. And then when we got a new city attorney, he said that needs to be in zoning. That you put it in the wrong section. I think they put it under the building or nuisances. I don't remember which one they put it in, but it was in the wrong section. So we agreed to hold a meeting, hold a public meeting, and we recodified it under 14. We had a request from one of our commissioners that we'd like to look into this a little bit more. And this was a meeting to discuss, do we want to open up this particular Pandora's box, can of worms, tree ordinance, call it whatever you want. I will tell you in reviewing it, there are some technical deficiencies. It refers to sections that don't exist, that have been, when we recodified it, they got codified out. So I would argue there is still some work to do. So I would make a simple proposal that in our meetings future, we open up the tree ordinance and we review this, even if it's just to fix the technical deficiencies. We're not gonna vote on it, we're not taking any action on this. This was just a Brian wanted to talk about it for one reason. I now want to talk about it for a different reason, and that's two of us. Love to hear y'all's thoughts on it.
Can we ask the city attorney to propose cleaning up the language and the bad references, et cetera?
We
I don't know if we need to take any action, but it seems like we should, before we start talking about it, maybe we should get a
Yeah,
proposed cleanup.
the city attorney reminded me that 99% of planning and zoning commissions across the state of Texas take orders from the city council to do stuff, and then they do it and send it back, and that he hasn't really had the chance to sit on a P&Z that actually takes these things on their own. I respect that, and yet I pushed back and said, we did do this for city council, but we're gonna really take a deeper look at it if we choose to. I'm now convinced, because there's some technical deficiencies, to take a deeper look. We can go as far into this as we want to.
Is there anything specific, Brian, that we should focus on that you're thinking about, or just a general sort of?
Well, a lot of the feedback I got from folks was like, and maybe it's just because people aren't always paying attention to things anyway, but it was like, oh wow, we have a tree ordinance now. And it all of a sudden happened, and people were kind of anecdotally commenting about what it was. And for a little bit there, it wasn't available on the website.
Yep.
And so then, I had people saying like cedar elms are on the protected species list. That's crazy. Cedar
Yep.
elms are like brittle trash trees that, they grow fast and they're really tall, but they also have a tendency to like.
But it's a high percentage of the tree canopy that we have, so.
Well, I know. So there was.
They're my worst allergies, so I'm happy to discuss taking that off the protected trees.
Well, those are, yeah. So anyway, there was just a bunch of comments that I heard from others where I thought, well, I know that, I think Gavin put a lot of hard work into this, so in no way am I.
It was council person, what do we call him?
Hundley and Patillo.
Yeah, it was
Oh, it's Hunter.
Councilmember
Patillo.
Patillo,
Okay.
and then Gavin
Amy.
had some, yeah.
Well, they did a great job and a lot of hard work, and so I'm not
Lot
trying to
of hard work.
not trying to pick it apart
Yep.
at all.
Yep.
But since we were kind of injecting it back into this section, I didn't know if we wanted to take a look at some of these provisions.
Just gonna put hackberries. I read it, guys. I'm happy to have another discussion in public about this. When it was coming up, we discussed this. We didn't, as a commission, get an opportunity to discuss this. So happy to discuss it again. Happy to have one meeting. Happy to have a series of meetings. I don't know if it's been around enough for people to really get a sense of what they like or don't like about it. It strikes me in reading this, having dealt with Westlakes and dealt with the city of Austin, that they have found a happy medium between those two, I would say, poorly written codes. And so I've got no issues with this beyond technically it's referring to sections that don't exist. And there's some confusion that creates, because if it's in the buildable area, you replace it one tree for one tree. If it's in the setbacks, it's one tree for three trees. But I couldn't quite figure out because of these technical deficiencies, I was trying to understand, if I cut down a 12-inch oak tree, does that mean I have to put in, and you have to put in 1/4 of the caliper inches? Does that mean I put in one and a third calipers, or do I have to put in 4? I couldn't understand it. So I wouldn't mind inviting Councilmember Patillo to come to this commission and help us understand it, and inviting the public and making it an opportunity for the public to come in and ask questions about it. And then from a matter of technicality, I would love to fix the references so that this is clearer. There's just a lot of references that go to the wrong place.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, and to your point, anecdotally, I've heard some of the same things. I would say if we do that, given it's a fairly sensitive issue, I would recommend proactive. Yes,
Invitation.
please come next door, whatever avenues we have for posting. Because I think, from my perspective, and I don't necessarily have any issue with it either. My understanding is it's pretty well
Is there-
done. I had a little bit of an issue that it was passed before I'd ever heard anything about it.
Okay.
And as a citizen who's somewhat involved in government, I thought that was a little surprising.
People ask me.
And I was
when we
told,
get
well,
it.
it was in the agendas of city council. I'm like, well, you know, that doesn't, I feel like
I
this
just
is
had
something that
different
we should do
experience. I was
outsource.
talking to,
Yeah.
frankly, all of them about it, so I get that, it sounds like we need another conversation within Rollingwood about this, and I'm happy to host that. I think B and Z can host that.
Yeah, and I think we
I
should be
think
very
it's-
proactive about getting people to come.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree that there have been a lot of issues and topics that have gotten a lot more coverage. And while I am a big supporter of the tree ordinance, I don't think it had an opportunity to make the rounds and be heard. And I do think that's an important part of the process, because I think that enriches the process when everybody gets to kind of weigh in and you strike some compromise. I view it, and I don't know that the language is in here enough, because I haven't looked at it carefully. I just scanned it again, and I'm not sure that this is the entire proposal, but I view it as an opportunity to remind people when they're building and doing new construction that the prudent thing is to really try as best you can to work around the existing quality trees, because it does enhance the quality of the project. And a lot of people view them as an obstacle. It's hard to work around trees. I know that because I'm doing it right now, and it takes a lot of care. But ultimately, it's better for the neighborhood. It's better for the value of the home. You're protecting your neighbors, and all sorts of things. But the other thing that I would say that might be missing is language to talk about the care and protection of the trees during construction.
It's in
Be-
there.
Is it sufficiently, do you think?
It's part of the building permit proposal. I read it. Application, 107-376. Application for building permit must include a survey, include grading and tree protection.
Okay, that's vague.
Yeah.
I don't
So that could
think,
be strengthened.
that's what
Agreed.
I'm talking about. Like,
Yeah.
you can't,
Like, what
in
does that mean?
Austin, you cannot store building materials like on the tree roots.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
There's all sorts of protections that I don't think there's enough education out there to remind people. And again, I'm experiencing this myself. And so,
I lost a 100-year-old oak during construction
I know.
because some chucklehead trenched across the critical root.
that's where
And I had no idea what I was doing.
it's
Education would
sickening.
help.
And me too. And I thought I did, but I don't. And I think that that's partly getting an arborist in to talk about these things and to educate people before they start construction
Okay.
about how to protect these trees. That's my 2 comments.
Well, it sounds like there's some interest from 3 of us up here, so I don't think we're allowed to take action because we didn't notice it, but generally speaking, we will bring this up in an agenda at a future meeting. Are we allowed to talk about when you guys think it would be most appropriate? Recall that we will not be meeting in January. We have agreed to a different schedule. We meet in December and we meet in February, and then March, April, May, but then not in the summers. So
I would say February, even if we proactively try to get people here in December, it's probably not going to be much of a turnout. And the whole point of this, I think, is to get more eyes on this than what were on it originally,
I'm
particularly in
surprised.
light of the fact that I guess in hindsight, we've said it really wasn't implemented properly in terms of,
okay.
you know, should have come through zoning, I guess, to begin with. And it sounds like there were,
But there's also, like, I know one person was complaining that they liked Rollingwood because we have lax tree rules, and they cut down an enormous oak tree just because it blocked the view, and very mature tree, and I
Yeah.
think that that's absurd.
We've had some issues in our section with trees and neighbors, and it's gotten to a point I never thought I would see in Rollingwood. So, agreed with February from probably getting the most time to get the word out. There's a part of me that also just wants to start getting the word out now and go for it in December, to be honest, just because there's some deficiencies in this.
When's our
I think
December
it's
meeting?
enforceable.
When's our
I guess, the
December
first week.
5th or something?
I don't want to give the impression that we're talking about abandoning a tree ordinance
No.
or, you know, pulling out various restrictions. If anything, I think we need to tighten it up,
Okay.
but that's me.
Yeah, I'll say personally, I feel like this is an incredibly complicated and lengthy tree ordinance, and I think that,
You crazy. Go ahead,
well,
sorry.
I think there's a lot of things in our code that are very lengthy, but I'm not looking to necessarily like strip it or anything like that. I just think that there's some things that we could address that kind of address some of these comments that I've heard from others.
It's December 4th and I will not be here. I'm graduating.
Congratulations.
So now I'm back to February. So
I was going to vote for December, but
Okay.
if we're not going to have,
I just think after Thanksgiving, before Christmas, I mean, even if we try really hard to get people out, they're not gonna come.
Yeah, that'd be hard.
I would think you start noticing right after New Year, whatever the procedure is, start noticing right after New Year's when everybody's back and.
I'm confused. My calendar has all the planning and zoning commission meetings blocked out.
So they're still reserved, cause you can still have meetings if you want. We
Oh.
just kinda took off the need for those holiday ones. So if y'all wanted to have one and you have something come up that you need to address, that's why they're still on the calendar, so those are still your reserved times.
Like if a
But-
plat comes up or something
Right,
like that.
yeah, if it needs to come to P and Z, but other than that, you're welcome to, or you voted to technically make those meetings only as needed. So
Oh,
there's still
gotcha.
we could
Okay.
show up in January is what you're saying. or-
Oh, interesting.
Right.
It's really early.
But it'd be January
Well, I had like
3rd or
tonight
whatever.
is crossed out. December, January, February,
Well, we can
March.
notice it
all of
whatever
mine,
day
April
we
are
want.
crossed through.
Yeah.
I'll get with
Yeah,
you.
as long as it's
Okay.
not
Switched it over
competing
from
city
her
meeting.
emails, I think,
Maybe
those
we do
requests
that.
to mine.
Maybe we see
Okay.
what- maybe see what
Cancellation.
wins that.
Gotcha.
It was a mess.
Okay.
It's our fault.
We're gonna have a meeting. We'll figure out a good time.
Sure.
Simple as that. Let's take the same approach.
Should we have
Then
a December
to-
meeting if you're not going to be here?
We'll have to message that separately. Unfortunately, not part of this topic. Okay, we're gonna open up public hearing then on number 7. No action taken on number 6. Number 7, we're gonna open up public hearing at 8:22 to discuss short-term rentals. Any input on short-term rentals? I like the laugh.
Pick the right meeting.
Don't say short-term rentals.
Okay. Anything?
I didn't know, I thought we already had, no short-term rental.
Correct. There are none.
You'd be surprised.
Please
at
come to
how-
the podium and say, I
Not
thought we already had it.
effective.
Okay, no,
Okay.
it's retracted.
Okay. Any further comments?
Well, what we gonna talk about? What is there to talk about?
We're going to talk about it. We're just going to talk about whether or not we
Build
want
some
to talk
hotels
about it.
in the-
Yeah.
Well, literally, there's no action to be taken. It was a.
We should make these agenda items. Are we closed on public hearing yet?
We're not closed on public hearing. So, any other? No? Okay. Well, we'll close public hearing then at 8:20. I think that's a 4. Close it at 8:24 and return to regular session. Again, guys, this was a discussion. We passed this one pretty quickly. It was unenforceable in the code section within which it was in. It's now in 14. We passed it. There were no changes to the previous code. As you can see from what they sent us, we have a very short code for short-term rentals. They are banned. I have heard scuttlebutt from some of the longer-term members of Rollingwood who are starting to find out what our neighbors in Westlake and our neighbors in Austin are able to charge, and said, wait, I can make $10,000 for 1 week? And so I'll be honest, I'm curious if the Rollingwood has any interest in revisiting this, and if the answer is no, then I don't want to. There's a part of me that wants to just put it on, advertise it. If nobody shows up talking about it, we know the answer and we move on.
I think you'll have.
We did not
show up.
really advertise when we recodified it. It just happened. Does that make sense? So, I'm interested in truly, I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't care one way or the other. I hadn't thought about it. I'm just wondering, it's been going on since, when did we codify this? 15. It was in response to a particularly egregious example. We banned it. Was there any interest amongst the neighborhood in considering some other form? Westlake has now gotten a different rule in. Austin's rule has changed. a lot of stuff has happened, good and bad, with short-term rentals, and there's more knowledge about them. And do we have any interest as a neighborhood in discussing it?
I've always been open to extremely limited consideration only of, what would Austin had the type 1, type 2, and I don't remember which is which, but there's the kind where there's no owner occupant, it's just a hotel.
right.
And then there's the other kind where there's an owner occupant and they do some limited
Westlake, it
renting
has
out of
to
their
be
own
your
personal
homestead.
home, right?
It has to be your homestead. You can't own it. You have to be homesteading there to be able to.
So I've always been open to that. I think it's and I would, if I ever got on board with it, I would limit it to specific weeks of the year, which I don't know, whether
Oh,
there's,
ACL.
whether you can legally do that. Yeah, in times of the year when the whole neighborhood is completely disrupted anyway, or half the neighborhood is gone, spring break, which happens to be South by Southwest too.
They're making $10,000 a week across the street from Rollingwood, and I think that may be attractive to some of our neighbors who could utilize to pay their taxes.
Affordable, yeah.
And I've heard that from older people and longer. I won't say older.
Longer
Longer-time
term residents.
More experienced residents in Rollingwood have. That doesn't mean they want to change it. They were just like, oh wait, okay, we're learning.
We think about,
So.
is there a way to do it that is
Yeah.
appropriate, non-disruptive? I think it's worth a conversation. I don't know. I've always been open to it, and based on my conversations with other people, I think I'm more the exception than the rule, is what I've gathered. So I've never really pushed to talk about it anymore because I don't think there's a whole lot of general support for it. But I've always thought we got these 2 weeks of the year where you could do it and make money, and those two
IRS
weeks
does
are already a
tax.
mess here anyway, and
You get 2 weeks of renting out your house.
right, and
that's
that's the other
untaxed.
reason I've thought about it. There's only 2 weeks.
Wait,
You can
right.
only do it for 2 weeks without incurring income tax.
Yeah.
Say that again?
You get 2 weeks for the IRS for income taxes. You get 2 weeks to rent your house, and it's untaxed. You pay no income taxes on it. Anything if you rent 3, then you pay taxes on the whole bit, which is pretty funny.
Wow.
Yeah, I found this out on a different property.
Yeah, and I do a lot of work in the multifamily space, and so this is a huge hot button issue. Is apartments are
Yep.
being done under the radar and everything, but now there are these software providers.
So-
Pillow is one of them, where they can, where like City of Rollingwood, for example, could, and I don't know what it costs, but they could engage with Pillow or another software provider that can manage those rentals, and they can tell, if you wanted to say it's limited to these 2 weeks a year. It's limited to a minimum number of nights of this. There's all this criteria you can set, and it can be governed. And then, once somebody's rented for their 2 weeks, their advertisement is shut down by the software. So if you chose to get into the weeds and figure out how to make it palatable, there are a lot more ways that exist now than there were in 2015 to.
That's
To
super
govern it.
interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. In
Like-
fact,
There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 active in VRBO right now for January 25th.
This is great. So our city can make some money. Let's note these into the record, and $500 per day fine. Is
So
that
there
right?
are
but
some.
see,
that
and
are
that's
active.
the hard part
Just
too, is you
because
have to
it's
catch
here.
them in the act in order to
Yeah.
find them. I don't think there's any fine
These
for
could be legacy
advertising.
things that just never got cleared out of the database, all that kind of stuff.
But if you chose to do it on the up and up, and the city, engage with one of these service providers, they could immediately shut those down based on these certain criteria.
So then
is
you
my
actually have
understanding.
regulation, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It could go either way. It could be like, we really want to block these out. It was unenforceable. It's now enforceable through our action. We didn't really discuss it. I wouldn't mind, again, having a bit of a more public discussion about it. But if it's just me and nobody else wants to talk about it, then look,
Right.
I'm not going to waste everybody's time. So, where are you
I
thinking?
mean, I'm
Alex?
interested in it, but
I don't have a strong opinion.
Okay.
It's the sort of thing that I would love to get feedback from the community on before I could
Yeah.
get a sense of where people are with it.
Brian, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think it makes sense to discuss it, and it'd be great to revisit it. It's been 5 years, and a lot of things have changed since we've
Yeah.
first picked this up. Has it been 5? It's been longer than that.
I think it's been longer. I think it was already in place when I moved in, which
It's
was,
been on the
As it
books
is.
since 2010.
Yeah.
As far as codified, it was 2015.
Okay, so 2010. Sorry, thank you. So it's been almost a decade now. So,
and for the record, I have no interest in saying you can short-term rentals are allowed. To the extent I would
Agreed.
want to talk about it, it would be under heavy restriction.
Agreed. It could be increase the fines. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
what we want to talk about. It could be like, no, we really don't want them, and we really want to get serious about not having things show up on VRBO and Airbnb.
Wasn't there some
That's
sort of
probably-
maximum fine too that we talked about last time? Wouldn't the state dictate some sort of max fine or minimum
I
fine
think
or something?
the category that it previously was in wasn't enforceable because it was like, you can't find, there was
Been in
something
that
about like
house?
where it was, you couldn't actually
Been in
find
that
more than
house.
some.
I mean, like these are
What's that?
houses that we've all been in, guys. Like,
I know, yes,
they've got reviews. I mean,
yeah. Really enjoyed my time at the Scott residence.
that was mine.
Loved.
Great pool.
They put out some fresh sheets. It was
The linens
fantastic.
were really soft.
It's gonna crack me up when one Rollingwood person rents from another Rollingwood person. All right.
Which
Before or
actually
after
could happen. That
trees,
could be a
guys?
positive.
In the stack. I'll be honest. I feel like the tree thing's probably more important than this deal. That's just my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any rush to this, certainly.
Okay.
I'd put it on for whatever our.
Knock them both out. Really, just kick over the hornet's nest and get
Yeah,
everybody.
that would be a long meeting. I think you gotta separate them.
We
I
gotta
might
get
start
this.
A rumor that we're gonna,
Brian
we're
can't
gonna
pay his
legalize
babysitters
short-term
enough for
rentals,
that
and I'll
meeting.
get a lot of people here real quick. So, okay. Well, very good. No action needed. No action taken. Appreciate y'all's feedback on it. I don't know if we put our standing. Let's talk about the future in our.
It's not on there.
No.
So we cannot.
So we can't
discuss-
talk about the future. Sorry, guys. Would you guys like to adjourn at 8:30?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, and we do appreciate your fill-in.
Thank you. Thank you, city staff.
Can we put on our thing that we'd like Megan to come?